Hi there, and welcome to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast, and I am still your host, Olivia Fierro, in studio here with Margaret Stewart. We are in Phoenix, and that just so happens to be the setting for the book we are talking about today, and you are going to love it. Wait for it. No, you don't have to wait for it. That's actually the title of the novel. And the author is joining us, and she is also calling Phoenix her hometown. Jenn McKinlay is the author of this novel that follows Annabelle leaving frigid Boston in the winter and all her old strings behind for a new job in a new city, sunny Phoenix, Arizona, where her presence as a very good-looking guest house tenant not only turns her own life upside down, but Nick's as well. Jenn McKinlay, congratulations on another one. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to talk about this book. It is sweet and full of heart and humor and all the good stuff. And as I understand it, we have some of your favorite fans to thank for really the impetus of writing this book.
Yeah, they pretty much demanded it. Yeah, I had no idea I was going to write about Annabelle, and then it was just, they wanted the Annabelle book.
So backstory, Annabelle is the sister of your main protagonist, and Paris is always a good idea.
Yes. And she was only written to be the humorous counterpoint, because the Chelsea in Paris is always a good idea. It's a little uptight. We'll go with that. So the younger sister, Annabelle, who's kind of the one who gets her to go on her journey, was a wild child, but I wrote her mostly to be a foil. But then everybody wanted to know what happened to Annabelle.
Well, that has got to be so exciting. I love when I hear from the authors of any book who says that, the characters go in a direction that surprised them, which as readers we just can't even fathom. And also, that somebody will be a minor character and in draft number 1, say, and then in the final book be your hero, or somebody who will reemerge and demand a story be told all about them. So set the scene for us as to what Annabelle is going through in Boston, and it's quite hilarious what really makes her take this job opportunity in Phoenix. But she's a really unique gal.
She is. She's a graphic designer, so she has an art background. And like Chelsea, they lost their mother very young, in their early 20s. And both of them have different ways of dealing with it. With Annabelle, it was to try to fill the void. So she has developed a habit of finding broken men and then fixing them, thinking that if she could fix them, they would stay with her forever. And of course, they don't. But the first husband, because there's 2 ex-husbands, the first ex-husband has followed her to Boston. And while she thinks they're kind of doing a friends with benefits thing, he has a whole other agenda. So when he drops a proposal on her, she kind of kicks into the flight or fight and goes with flight. And that's pretty much the opening chapter.
Yeah, and I don't think we're giving too much away in that it is just a very funny, kind of absurd scene that you can see playing out, kind of in a big screen rom-com. And, I mean, she finds herself in quite a predicament, but she manages to get out of obligating herself to a future with somebody that she's ready to leave behind, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Even if it means moving 3,000 miles.
And a quick visit to a hospital room.
Yeah. Well.
There's just always that kind of thing. So she relocates to Phoenix, and I imagine it was pretty fun for you to use your home setting as the backdrop for your storytelling and be able to kind of brag a little bit about some of the things that we love here. I mean, there's references to Camelback Mountain and, of course, the beautiful weather and a lot of your favorite things.
Oh, I love it. I moved here in my 20s from Connecticut, so she really recreates my journey, although I spared readers the driving across country.
Because that could be dull.
Oh, so especially Texas. Texas is very big. But she kind of responds to the desert the same way I did. When you grow up, I don't know did you grow up here?
In California.
Okay, so close, but not, the desert is its own thing.
Yes.
And I love Arizona and I love Phoenix, and I never feel like we get enough national recognition for being awesome. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Phoenix Suns, for a good year.
Yes, exactly. We finally did get a little attention.
Right? And it better stay. So for me, it is bragging rights about everything I love. And growing up in Connecticut, it's all trees and it's beautiful. I love Connecticut, and I grew up on the shore. So, no complaints. But the desert is just so beautiful. And Phoenix itself has such a rich, to me, culture. There's so many. Everybody here is from someplace else. They bring their culture with them. And then the people that were here before, the First Nations, have such extraordinary cultures. I mean, it's just fantastic. I don't know how anybody doesn't get excited about Arizona and how amazing it is. And even when I remember, I think the first 6 months I lived here, I would walk outside and see a saguaro cactus and just, because we're the only ones who have that. Mm-hmm. Nobody else shares those. So yeah, it was definitely bragging rights in this book.
Well, and it's funny because when people are not familiar with really spending time here, they think that we're a little bonkers by saying that we absolutely have the best sunsets ever, period, end of conversation. Mm-hmm. And so, Annabelle quickly will learn that, right?
Yes, she does. She did. That's one of her first things, like, oh, yeah, we really do have the best. We have the best sunsets.
I think we got to do a little Convention Visitors Bureau partnership for you. This book should be, in hotel rooms at the resorts, or, for somebody to take it out by the pool and enjoy some of the beauty we have. So her encounters with the young man who we're able to hop into, and we get to enjoy. You give us the narration both from Annabelle and also from Nick, who is troubled in a different way than Annabelle. I mean, she's kind of a run from your trouble, and he's kind of a fearful, sort of stubborn, kind of maybe push away to protect yourself rather than run off. Tell me about how and why you decided to go into his voice also and bounce back and forth between these two characters as they get to know each other and get to know themselves. And also, on initially they seem to have really very little in common, but at heart there's a lot that connects them.
There is. That's such a good question. I have to let my cat out. Sorry. I swear. We found him. His name is George, and most people who follow me online know him because we found him when he was days old. So he's 4 years old now. The vet told us not to get attached, so we really brought him. I mean, baby bottles and all that. But he runs the house. He wants in, he wants out. It's like, I can't tell you how many Zooms I've done where I'm like,
doesn't George know you're a famous author? Come on, yes. George.
No respect.
No respect.
Zero. None. He's like, open the door, butler. Anyway. And I had it open, but it wasn't open enough,
That's cats. Even better. That's even better. Yeah. Because cats.
Yes. We should all be cats. Just, But back to your question, Annabelle and Nick are very different in their response to things. And when I started writing it, I didn't plan on writing in Nick's perspective. That was a surprise. But I realized when you're trying to explain anxiety or go into somebody's feelings of anxiety, you can't do that from outside looking in. And I think you see it when you respond to the people you care about. I mean, I love my family, but if one of them is melting down, there is a little part of me that's like, pull it together. So when I was writing about Nick, I thought the reader really has to be in there with him and feel the heart palpitations and, the weakness, the residual weakness from his condition. So it opened up a whole new story. And I really, he's not a typical hero for me. I generally write beta males, nice guys, because that's what I like and I can relate to. And he's not. He's kind of grumpy and he's had a rough go and he's not very happy. And it was really interesting to get into his head and be able to write him from that perspective. So mostly the story kind of dictated it, because I did try to write it just from Annabelle. And I felt like I'm not locking in on this guy. So then when I went into his perspective, and I think the other thing in a rom-com is it's so nice to see how the hero sees the heroine.
Yes.
Because he goes from thinking of her as, she's plain, nothing special, to she just opens up his world in so many ways, the sunshine to his, grumpy, that he starts thinking of as just, this real gift. So that was kind of fun to write that one too.
Oh, I love that. And you're completely right. I don't think that you could be able to tell that side of the romance. And it is, the evolution is where the story really lies and the heart lies, and what they're able to get from each other, as we're seeing them both evolve and be afraid and be mad and be all of these things. Ultimately, anytime we're talking about romance or love stories, I mean, it's really about courage, right? About being able to dare to risk rejection or risk being left again, maybe, and taken out of what's a safe space. So what do you think the themes are of some of romantic stories that people connect to the most when you're sitting down to write? What is it that you want to deliver? Is it a bit of inspiration? Is it a bit of hope? Or is it just escape?
Ooh, really good question. I don't know that I've thought that much about it. I mostly write to entertain myself.
So. No wonder you're so good.
Well, one of the things I always tell you is write the book you want to read. Mm-hmm. And then recently I saw a joke that was, write the book you want to read because you're going to have to read it 75 times. It was like, yeah, that's true. So that was hilarious. And I wish I could give credit to the hilarious person who put it up, but I have terrible retention. I think I had a kind of a rough and tumble childhood, and books really pulled me into a safe space. Mm-hmm. And becoming a writer was just a natural evolution. It's why wouldn't I want to give to other people what was given to me? Mm-hmm. And when you're writing a story, you're living in that story. So I think for me, it is I do like escapism. Books have taught me to be courageous and kind. I've learned a lot of critical thinking mm-hmm. through fiction. And I mean, the best things I hear as a writer is when a reader will reach out to me and say, I had to spend the day in the children's hospital with my son, and your book got me through it. And it's just like, okay, I'm good. Wow. I don't need some higher literary purpose.
Yeah.
I'm helping someone. So for me, it's mostly entertainment. But I think when you talk about love stories, there is no other time in your life that you're that vulnerable. And I think for me, when I write these stories, I want the readers to take away, be brave. It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. It's going to surprise you. So I hope that's what they get out of it.
Oh, I love that. And that sentiment, I think, comes through. And obviously, your readers are connecting to you deeply, and they want to engage with you and hear about your writing process and connect with the other readers and share these stories, which I think is really cool. And one thing that I'm just fascinated by is the concept of, for authors, pseudonyms and writing under different names, and so being so creative that not only are you writing different book series and writing different characters, which most of us cannot even comprehend possibly fantasizing about doing, but you're also writing as different names. So how does that all work, and how do you keep track of all of the people that you've got going on in your mind at any given time, and how productive and quick you are at all of this?
Yeah, it's a lot. I tend to I think I have a little ADD, where I'm one of those people that it's like I open the refrigerator, take out the milk, I walk away, and then an hour later I find the milk. Mm-hmm, it's like, oh, and I'm sure I was plotting something. But for the different stories, I tend to look to the masters. And I remember reading many years ago, Stephen King said, you should only take one season to write the first draft. So that seemed reasonable. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, that means I write a romantic comedy, and then I write a mystery, and then I write a mystery, and then maybe I write another romantic comedy or a mystery or whatever my publisher wants. I do write mostly under the name Jenn McKinlay, but I have written some mystery series under other names, partly because at one point I had 5 mystery series going at the same time. So yeah, it was crazy. So I was writing about 5 mysteries a year. So that one I kind of tightened up the season. But for me, it's just, honestly, straight talk, it took me 5 years to break into being published with a traditional publisher, and I have lived under the constant fear of they're going to fire me. I'm going to fail. They're going to fire me. This career is short-lived. Yeah. And, now it's like 15, 20 years later, and it's like, you're not going to get fired, but I can't help it. Now it's like compulsive. It's like, nope, one season, one book, one season, one book. That's, so yeah, I'm kind of a mess.
If I write under a pseudonym, she could get fired, but I never can. Maybe that's also a whole, get a whole special approach there too, yeah. Which is very interesting. But to go through different series and then to return to and say, okay, Cupcake mysteries, cozy crime, is that what the genre is kind of, or as it is, cozy crime, you have to know about so many different things. So I imagine that you're just a kind of a voracious wanting to learn about a lot of different parts of life. So is the baking a natural part of your life, or is that something that you sought out because of the books, or the books are because that's a passion of yours also?
Oh, no, I love baking.
Okay.
I don't like to cook. I hate cooking. Cooking's boring. It's neat. Who cares? Yeah. But baking, yes. Oh. And I have 2 sons. So, all those birthdays, all the bribes, well, if you mow the lawn, I'll make the chocolate chip cookies, So baking, and I've loved it since I was a kid. And then another mystery series is, The Library Lovers. Well, I was a librarian for 20 plus years, wow. Part-time in Phoenix. So, so I could kind of be a stay-at-home mom and get out a little bit. So the research is just natural. I know how to do that. So one of my other mystery series is a London hat shop mystery series, which was totally came to me in the middle of the night after the royal wedding. But anyway, and I didn't know anything about hats. Obviously, we don't really wear hats here. But again, research. And, we have to go to London. Bummer. And the Paris book was similar to that when it was, it's Ireland, Italy, and Paris. And when I first thought of it, it was going to be South America, Africa, and Europe, different country like Chile and Morocco. And my agent was the one who said, can you get to all those places before it's due? And I was like, no. So then it had to be places I'd been. And then I shoved in Paris, which I hadn't been to, but I really wanted to go to. So I was like, yes, I can do this. So.
You have pretty much figured out life, and you're winning it at all.
Thank you. I try.
So authors coming off of the pandemic and being home, many who we've spoken to have said that their lives didn't change all that much because you're usually home writing anyway. However, you're sharing space and trying to, work through some other things, and life changed for most of us just in terms of the way that we were kind of thinking or feeling. Where does this book come in, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, from conception, and how did this time period settle with you and change anything that you're doing?
This book was finished in the beginning of the pandemic, back in those glory days where we're like, it's only going to be a month.
I'll be back on tour. No problem.
No problem. Yeah. I was supposed to go to Germany for a book tour. It's fine. It's fine. But, it hit, I was finishing it probably the first 2 months of the pandemic. And fortunately, I have friends who had a vacant house because all of a sudden I had a college kid back, I had a high schooler, and I had a husband, all of us working at home. And I was used to working at home alone. So it was intense. So I made their house my office, and I finished the book. And then overall, the pandemic, I've managed to write a couple more mysteries, and I'm finishing up the next women's fiction. So that's exciting. But it's been hard because my people all went back to school and work. So that was fine. But there's no book tours and there's no conferences. And the thing that I didn't expect was how much I get from book signings and meeting the readers. And even the conferences where you spend 4 days with the only other people in the world who can understand the way you work, the way you think. It really just fills you up when you go to it. Like for writers who want to be published, go to conferences, meet your people. They just pick you up and they listen to you, and you feel like, you're not, because I love my family, but they get tired of hearing about my plot issues. They're like, just kill the guy off. It'll be fine.
Are we still talking about this? Come on.
Can we have one conversation not about the book? It's like, well, okay.
Let's go back to the cookies. I'm more interested in the cookies, Mom.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, and it's been an exciting pleasure with this podcast to talk to authors who admire so much, and I think the creative process is just mind-boggling and fascinating to me. I'm in awe of it, but also about how so many writers really do feed off of each other and having sort of a communal spirit and almost like a sisterhood within the ranks of competitors almost. But how much can be gained from, in a solitary profession, feeling a part of a creative community.
It's so true. And a lot of people will look at other writers as competition, but I always feel like if someone breaks new ground, that just means there's more room at the table for everybody. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I've noticed across the board is that most writers, because it did take me 5 years to break in, I would like to shorten that for the writers that I meet. It's like, what can I tell you? How can I help you? How can I give you cuts? I have yet to meet a writer who isn't gracious or kind or sends the elevator down. I feel very fortunate to be in this industry where we really do look at each other as, a kinship, a club, and we want to help each other. And I have two friends because I have written a lot of mysteries. So I've murdered a lot of people fictionally.
Let's go on record and make sure we're clear about that.
So we're clear, yes. But I have two mystery writer friends where, I've really gotten to the point where I'm like coming up with ways to get rid of people. It's getting sticky. So we will get together and have a little plot group. And, one of them will say, oh, you did that in book 13.
I did?
Yeah, it's like, oh, darn. And then we'll work together to kind of come up with something new and fresh.
Oh my gosh. That's just an interesting aspect to a successful career is when you've started to run out of tools, devices, scenarios to off some of your characters. That's fantastic. I know that you have also been very present on social media, kind of connecting with people who want to know about your writing process and also encouraging other writers. So how has it been to transition and get a little bit of that interaction through that space while we've been more stuck at home?
Social media is amazing. I think about seeing my family on Zoom because most of them are still back east. And, it was a real lifesaver for, I think, a lot of us. Meeting readers that way has been great. I miss being able to hug people. That's, I'm a hugger. Mm-hmm. But the social media itself, it's tough to keep up. Like I have never mastered Snapchat. And my sons are like, it's hard. It's not intuitive. It's not. I'm like, that is just not intuitive. And I'm all about usability. So, librarian. So I've never mastered Snapchat. TikTok, I'm kind of, I just realized it's a rabbit hole that I will go into and not come out of. And at the same time, there's so many stories in there that as a writer, I found a story about two young women who found out they were sisters later in life. And I'm like, oh, there's a book. That's a book, and it's like a short little TikTok. And I'm like, no, I'm taking that. Sorry. So it's an amazing, but you have to be so careful, and I love Instagram because I'm definitely into the visual because as you said, the cover is so pretty for this book. So pretty. And there's so many great covers out there. One of my other favorite covers is the Lost Apothecary.
Oh yes, that's beautiful.
It's just, isn't it gorgeous? I think I bought it for the cover. I will admit it. It's a great book, but I bought it for the cover, and I'm hoping that happens with mine, but because it's gorgeous and it's so representative of Phoenix. So anyway, so I love the whole Bookstagram movement. It's you get to see all these. I have bought books because people have put up the covers and then said, oh, this book was amazing, and I haven't been disappointed yet. So that's exciting too. So it's a whole other way to vet, because I read something the other day that made me really sad. It said something about how many millions of books are published. And then it said in a lifetime, you can read about 5,000. And I had a panic attack. I'm like, what? I need to be able to read more than that.
You could read more than that if you weren't writing so many books.
There's that. Yes.
Some of us can read it. We'll be able to read a lot more than that. I know that part. But yes, and we were laughing as we get some of the early reads through NetGalley. And one of the questions that they ask when you're requesting a book is, Do you like the cover? Are you asking because you know the author, or you've heard about this book, or the description, or the cover? And so, I mean, it just appeals to, these books appeal on a lot of different sensory levels. And then when they deliver with the great story and just this enjoyable read, like you do, it's just such a win-win. So no doubt about it that Instagram will be a fan of Wait For It. I am sure of that. Before we wrap up, we obviously talked about you loved reading from an early age. I mean, you went on a path to become a librarian, which is just so cool. What was that experience like, seeing, especially when you think about the little kids who come into the library? I always remember doing summer reading programs, and now we do fancy camps and all of that. But when I was a kid, it was you get to go to the public library, you get to check out some books, and you are reading in a reading competition for the summer, and that's sort of the fun of the entire summer. It's air conditioned and and it's free, so it must be cool to be able to have a little touch of a young reader who, can start to love books for life.
Definitely. My mom was a librarian, so it's kind of the family business. Mm-hmm. My husband and I met in the library.
Oh my gosh, really?
So libraries are good for me. I miss it. I did a lot of adult programming and a reference librarian for many years. And then my last 8 years, I was a children's librarian. So my writing dream is to write in the adult mystery, romantic comedy world for a while. But I'm like, maybe when I'm like 65, 70, I'll pivot and write children's books, because I love children's books. There's so many classics. And it's like you were saying, you can go right back to your childhood. If I pick up a Nancy Drew book, I am right back sitting under the tree in my backyard when I was 9, And there's just so many, there's just so many touchstones for me with books.
Oh,
I love that.
Yeah, it's their special memories, and it really does. My dad found a note that I had written as a kid. I guess I was maybe 6 or 7, and I made my life sound very sad and lonely and boring. And I said, but at least I have my books, and my books keep me company, and I can always read something. And so it was like, but you are learning. I mean, I think I was being exceedingly dramatic. It was my brother had gone to college or something, but you're teaching yourself that you can be entertained and be calmed and explore the world when otherwise limitations are keeping you home for a variety of reasons. So it's an incredible gift, and that you've been a part of sharing that gift in so many ways is has got to be very satisfying.
It is. I think books are I don't know, just holding a book is kind of comforting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can open it and just kind of put the world away for a while.
Well, Jenn, you must be an incredible time manager as well. I mean, I read that you came up with this idea or most of the plot while you were in the shower rather than while you were sitting down and set to outline something. Do you just jot down your ideas immediately? Do you ever sit and come up blank? It doesn't seem like you could.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, you always worry about it. I don't know why. Maybe it's like being a reporter. It's like, is there going to be another big story? Of course there is. It's the same way I think with fiction. I think it's kind of like when you can calm your mind. So if I'm on a long drive, stories will come to me. If I'm in the shower, when you're doing those kind of mindless things, laundry, and then I usually will write it down, at least the key points right away. But then and then I kind of let it sit for a while. Like it has to kind of flesh out, kind of crock pot it, it kind of, as I said, sometimes the idea comes and then other people have the voice of reason and they're like, do you really want to set it there? Maybe. Okay, wait. Okay, yeah. Let me think. I mean, the one I'm working on now is called Summer Reading. And I'm setting it in Martha's Vineyard because I wanted to go to Martha's Vineyard.
See, she has life figured out. You could also be a life coach later on. So, I mean, there's just so many gigs for you. Like, it's ridiculous. Well, thank you so much for spending time today and for bringing this great book and also setting it here in our hometown, because I think that is a really special thing for people to be able to enjoy who live here in Arizona. And, of course, It'll be read all over the world. So you are doing a great job of sharing what we have to brag about. So Jenn McKinlay, thank you so much. I'm glad we didn't have to wait for it any longer. And congratulations on another great one. And we'll be waiting for all the next.
Yay. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. So Jenn McKinlay is so much fun, and she churns out so many books. So she said she's having another mystery come out right away, and I believe that's, within weeks.
Yeah, she's a very active writer. My goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
With a household and a demanding cat. So props to her.
That cat is very, very demanding. I just saw this little tail flopping about, and I thought, this cat is going to have its moment. We will be chatting with it soon, I'm sure.
Yes. So, I'm glad it was a cameo appearance here on the podcast, and we're also speaking kind of cameos in fiction. And she was saying, and as we talked about, that Annabelle here in Wait For It, the book we were just talking about, is the sister of the protagonist in Paris Is Always a Good Idea.
Yes.
So the kind of quirky, twice divorced 20-something. And it was really the fans that said, we want to know more about Annabelle. She needs more time on the page, and it kind of just got her own life, and out of that comes a book. So it is really cool when these authors do those little kind of crossovers. It's not a series, but you're like, wait a second.
Yes.
Wait a second.
It's like I call the character connection.
Yes.
And yeah, because I don't need to go so in depth into, okay, we get it. Like I know about this person, but at least also these books are written in a way that if you didn't read the first book, it could be a standalone.
Yes.
Versus a continuation of a story.
Right.
It's a continuation without being so connected that you get lost. So I like that. And for my recommendation for this week in that spirit, I have talked previously about a Roni Loren book called Yes, and I Love You. And I was able to read her next book, which I didn't realize it was going to be a series.
Oh.
It's called the Say Anything series. And it's the second book called What If You and Me? And you meet this character, and she's a podcast host. You meet her in book one, but she's like the side best friend. She's in it, but she's not a very prevalent character. And then she's the main character of book two. And then the previous main character of book one kind of makes her little cameo appearances. But again, it does not hang on that.
Okay.
And so it's really nice because you're like, oh, familiar, that's so fun.
Yeah.
But then you don't get so caught up in it that you're needing more from book one into book two. It's just very different.
I love that. Well, and it's so back when all I would read was chick lit, right? So, and I read every single Emily Giffin book possibly out there. But one of the things I loved about it was those little cameos or connections or Easter eggs or whatever, that you want to call them. And you would realize, oh, so-and-so is connected to so-and-so.
Right.
Even when the stories were completely
Absolutely
separate.
different.
So, a couple of them, of course, with the Something Borrowed and Something Blue were following the same trio. But later on, pretty much every single book, but I believe except for one, was a connection to one of the characters that we had spent time with prior to. So I always thought that's fun because to me as a writer strategy, you're giving rewards to the people who read a lot of your work.
Yes.
And it doesn't take anything from those who are new to you and picking up a book for the first time, but I don't know, it's a kind of a cool connection.
It's like a little secret between you and the author.
Yes.
Similar to, how Taylor Swift does all this stuff for her listeners and, Easter eggs in Disney or Marvel movies specifically or Pixar movies. There's always a little Easter egg. It's kind of fun. It's kind of the hunt. With books, it's a little different because you're not really hunting for it. I know Jennifer Weiner talked about a very brief cameo. It's not even a full one. It's just a little blip. And it's, it's kind of fun. You're like, oh, Yeah, I read that. I'm so
From
proud of myself.
Big Summer to That Summer.
Yes.
And it was actually the house.
Yes, it wasn't even a person.
So it's the location, which is very clever. So there's a familiarity there with the space, which is very important to the mood and the type of people. Yeah. That was cool.
I really liked that little connection. And it had she actually not pointed it out to me, or in the podcast, I probably would not have made that connection. So it's kind of nice to hear that and see that they're really paying attention to what their readers might be interested in.
And for all of you who are very into Bookstagram, they really care about what you think about these covers.
Oh, yeah.
And what these books look like, and it does make a difference. And it's kind of fun to also hear how social media shapes the way that they're strategizing, their book releases too, that they know that we're looking at this cover and they're hoping that people are going to want to take a pretty picture of it. And this Wait for a cover is screaming for, I need to do a little setup. It needs a salted margarita glass in a swimming pool.
Yep. Maybe in a little pool floaty.
Yes.
I will say I did receive a copy of this book, and I posted a picture of it on Instagram, and Jenn McKinlay reached out to me and said, your hair looks it's perfect for this book. And right now my hair is blue. At the time, it was the blue was fading into turquoise, which the turquoise is very prevalent here on this cover. And I felt very connected to it in many ways, including the phoenix and, me in a pool. I do love a pool.
Next up, you're going to ask for saguaro cactus green for your hair.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Although I did this myself, so I guess I'll have to seek it out.
Arizona sunset. Can we work on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes. It's going to need you're going to need to buy 9 different colors.
Well, I will tell you, I did coral. You've seen the pink and coral in my hair before. It's just, quarantine really got to me. And I couldn't look at my hair any longer or spend the amount of money on it when you're not going anywhere. So that's where the colors came from. But the sunset totally can work on it.
Oh, yes.
Like this creamy, yellowy pink.
Oh, it's
on this cover.
A little golden, a little pink, a little rose, and
do you think our bosses would let you do that?
I don't think my complexion would allow me to do that.
I think you could.
I don't think so. Also, possibly not my age, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that part.
You could do it. No
All
problem.
right. This was fun, Margaret. Thank you so much. And thanks to Jenn McKinlay. Her new book is Wait For It, and you do not have to wait for it anymore. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. We want to hear from you, so send us an email to oliviasbookclub@azfamily.com. Let us know what you're reading, and check out the Olivia's Book Club Facebook group, or you can follow along on Instagram @olivias.bookclub, or Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast, and please tell your friends.